Dear students, I wish a very warm and heartfelt greetings to everyone. I am Professor Suraj Mishra. In today's lecture from the subject Energy and Environmental Engineering, our topic of discussion is ecosystems. Here we will be discussing about concepts, structures and energy flow in the ecosystem. We will also study about types of ecosystem. Starting with the definition, the interaction of biotic and abiotic components forms an ecosystem, where living components such as plants, animals, microorganisms are included in the biotic components, and the non-living components such as soil, water, temperature, etc. are included in the abiotic components. Also, the community of plants, animals and surroundings, everything is connected to a network of ecosystem. Ecosystem is dynamic in nature where these biotic and abiotic components live, feed, reproduce and interact with each other in the same environment. And exchange of energy and matter takes place among them. To study this subject of ecosystem in a structured form, it is widely divided into two parts, natural and artificial. Examples of artificial ecosystem are urban colonization, where the human lives, agricultural and farmland, livestock, dams that human have made. These are artificial ecosystems. Talking about the natural ecosystem, it is further divided into two categories, terrestrial and aquatic, where terrestrial ecosystem includes desert, jungle, woodland, grassland, forest, and aquatic ecosystem includes river, lakes, ponds, sea and oceans. Here, as we can see in this diagram, the living components of the ecosystem are structured into three categories, namely producer, consumer and decomposer. Here, the consumers are further structured into herbivores, carnivores, omnivores and retrivores. Also, the non-living components of ecosystem are further structured into two categories, namely physical components that include sunlight, water, air, rainfall, wind, etc. and the chemical components that includes carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, iron, zinc, etc. The biotic component refers to all the living organisms, whether it could be a large life form, a small life form or a microscopic life forms, which are said and studied as flora and fauna. Here, flora refers to the plants and flowers and fauna refers to the animals. In the biotic components, producer form the base of food chain, and as per the definition of producer, these are the organisms which are able to manufacture their own food. Like plants and algae create their own food from the sunlight and the process is called photosynthesis. Here, consumers are the organisms that obtain energy by eating other living things because they cannot synthesize their own food. These consumers can be of following types: herbivores, carnivores, omnivores or detritivores. The herbivores category of consumers are also known as primary consumers, as they derive the energy directly from consuming plants. For example, deer, rabbit, horse, sheep, elephant. Their digestive system allows them to digest all kinds of plants including grasses. The omnivores category is a secondary consumers. They consume both plants and animals. Examples: fox, snake, bears, dog, and even human. Detritivores consumers, they feed on dead remains of plants and animals and break down these dead organisms and waste into small components and returning the nutrients back to the soil. They help in speeding the process of decomposition. Example: earthworms, termites, crabs, etc. The another component of ecosystem is abiotic components. It refers to the non-living component and the non-living factors that affect the living organisms like sunlight, rainfall, water being the physical components, and zinc, iron, carbon, nitrogen being the chemical components. These abiotic components are found in the atmosphere, and these components influence the growth, survival of the biotic organisms within an ecosystem. As we already know that in an ecosystem, the sunlight is converted into chemical energy by the producers such as plants or algae. Then it is transferred to the consumers, which are herbivores, carnivores. This process of transferring the physical energy is known as energy flow. And the energy flow in an ecosystem is governed by following cycles, namely water cycle, carbon cycle, oxygen cycle, and nitrogen cycle. Here we will be covering each of these cycles one by one. Starting with the water cycle. The water cycle describes the movement of water on the earth. It is also known as hydrological cycle. The water cycle is a multi-phase journey of the water molecules, and there are four main stages in the water cycle. They are evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and transpiration. From the water body, the liquid water evaporates into water vapor and condenses to form clouds in the sky and precipitates back to the earth in the form of rain. This water cycle is essential for maintaining a healthy ecosystem because the water supports the survival and growth of plants, native fishes, and other aquatic animals. Now we shall discuss about the carbon cycle. As we are already aware that carbon is a building block for both plants and animal tissues, because when a new life is formed, this carbon forms the key molecules like protein and DNA. Carbon is also available in the atmosphere in the form of carbon dioxide, which travels from the atmosphere into the organisms, also in the earth, and then back into the atmosphere over and over again, as shown in figure. Carbon dioxide is used by plants in the process of photosynthesis, and these plants are consumed by animals, and animal releases carbon dioxide during respiration. And when these plants and animals are dead and decomposed, this carbon is returned to the soil. Carbon cycle also helps in regulating the earth temperature and It also provides a key source of energy that fuels our economy. Here we shall be discussing about the oxygen cycle, and we know that the oxygen cycle is a critical life sustaining process that maintains the Earth's atmosphere and also supports the diverse ecosystems. Oxygen cycle refers to the movement of oxygen through the atmosphere. Oxygen is used up in the processes such as respiration. All organisms use oxygen for respiration. It is used in the process of decomposing when plants and animals die, and in the process of combustion, oxygen is required. This picture shows the oxygen cycle. Nitrogen is one of the primary critical nutrient for the survival of living organisms. Living things require nitrogen in the compound form. Just like carbon, nitrogen is also a building block for essential molecules like DNA, RNA, and protein, which supports the plant growth, soil fertility, and overall ecosystem's productivity. Nitrogen helps the plants to synthesize chlorophyll. There are bacteria which in the anaerobic condition means absence of oxygen. These bacteria use nitrate during the respiration. They breathe nitrate and exhale nitrogen gas back into the atmosphere. Nitrogen fixation bacteria are found in the root nodules of plants, which help in the growth of plants. During the final stages of nitrogen cycle, bacteria and fungi help decompose the organic matter, where nitrogenous compound get dissolved into the soil and is again used by the plants. Now let's study about the food chain. So, as we know that the food chain shows how energy is transferred from one living organism to the another living organism via food. Living organism requires energy to survive and grow. Food provides energy for the daily activity, like plants get their energy from photosynthesis, animals get their energy from the food they consume. A food chain shows how each living thing gets food and how the nutrients and energy are passed from one creature to another. Here in the picture, we can see a sequence of who eats whom in the biological community to obtain nutrition. Here in this picture, we are viewing a simple example of food chain where grass obtain their energy from the sun through the process of photosynthesis, and these plants are called as producers. Now the primary consumer feed on producer, example grasshopper, and the secondary consumer being bird, they feed on primary consumer, and the tertiary consumer being fox, they feed on secondary consumer. So this is how energy transfer takes place via food chain. Here is the another example of food chain. A small change in the size of population in a food chain will affect the other populations. In a food chain, each organism obtain energy from the one at a level below organism. When several food chains are connected all together, then a food web is formed. A model of food web where different food chains are interlinked is shown here. As we can see that in a food web, the organisms can obtain food from more than one type of organism, like giraffe, deer, and baboons. They feed on plants and vegetation. Also, the lion can feed on giraffe, baboon, zebra, wild beast, deer, etc. This picture depicts a typical food chain interlinked into a food web in a forest ecosystem. Here we can see the sequence of food web in the grassland ecosystem. Here we can see a classic example where grass being the producer, the grasshopper being the primary consumer, the mouse being the secondary consumer, the snake being the tertiary consumer, and the hawk the apex predator. This picture demonstrates the food web in an aquatic ecosystem. Here we can see that the killer whale feeds on seal, penguin, and these seal feeds on fishes, and fishes feeds on zooplanktons, phytoplanktons. This is how energy is transferred from the producers, being the plants and algae, to the consumers, could be tiny animals, to the apex predators such as killer whale. In the aquatic food chain, this picture depicts how the nutrients are recycled and ecological stability is maintained by controlling the population. A healthy ecosystem provides clean air, clean water, and nutritious food.